Well, welcome to our very last Impressionistic oil painting. Again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to follow a reference photograph. And this time we're going to push the photograph and turn it into an artistic style to help us try and figure out how it would look if you were an Impressionistic painter, how they would see it. We're not going to follow it slavishly, but it will give us an idea of how to do broken color, how to get the lights and the darks correct. The picture was one that I took in the Sethi Mahal area of the old city of Peshawar. A man walking in to the light, and the center of activity is the man, dark, with a lovely light coming across behind his feet. And that is the thing we're going to focus on, and then everything else is subsidiary to that. But try to avoid doing wall painting, and we're going to try and do broken color. I want to show you what the palette looks like, because for this video I'm going to be unable to show you show you how I mix the colors. There's not enough room because we're doing a 12 by 16 ambitious project. So let's get started. I just want to show you what the setup is, how I normally paint. So I have the picture itself that I'm going to base it on. I'm not going to follow it exactly, but especially for the lights and the darks, and I'll enlarge it for the bits that I get fiddly. I always have my test sheet ready to check colors, all the colors ready that I expect that I need, and then the palette itself. Notice that the original colors that we first included in our palette, I've added a couple of extra ones just to be sure that you know. So we've got lemon yellow, which is cool, and then a warm yellow. Cadmium light yellow is the favorite one of mine, cadmium yellow light. This one is the same, raw sienna. Only one red, the rose color. We're going to use very little of these two because the picture is very bright and light. So burnt umber, French ultramarine, and I've added one more blue, which is cobalt blue, which is the Impressionist's favorite blue color. It's quite powerful in a different way than the ultramarine blue. So those are the only colors I'm going to use, but I'm going to focus on these colors, these top 1, 2, 3, 4 warmer colors, and white for the light, and keep shifting to the shaded dark tones with these ones. So let's have a look at the image. We're following the same pattern that we've been using before, and that is to start with the darks, and we're going to paint over the darks to get the color. So burnt umber and ultramarine blue is a nice, more luminous dark. Make plenty of add plenty of liquid to it, so it's easy to paint. And right in the magic third there, we've got this guy, and I'm going to take quite a bit of care about getting his shape right. Later we'll play with it if we make mistakes, don't worry. When you start a painting like this, it's pretty intimidating, like you don't know if you can do it perfect. You're in a perfect place to start. So So for the light area, I just have white with a tiny dab of the two yellows, the yellow ochre, tiny bit of cobalt blue, tiny bit of rose red. So load the brush with the paint and then gently pull the strokes off, not dip-dabbing, and you'll get the Impressionistic style. The other really light spot would be of the same tone, would be the sky. There's one more area where the light is hitting, and that is on the right side, and it's not such a sharp shadow, except for near the top. So there's a reason for doing the lighter areas first here, because everything else in the picture has to be a darker tone. And it's tempting when you look at the colors not to make them of the right tone. So what I would do next would be to go to the other extreme, head for the darker tones, and then come back and do the middles. I think there's a psychological aspect to painting. When you're about to do another passage of the painting, in your mind you may be saying to yourself, whoa, I can't do this. There's a psychological aspect. So if you get to the point think, okay, I put the lights in just like Rob said, now I'm going to do the darker tones, and I'm in a panic, a mild or complete panic. Don't worry, I'm exactly the same. I feel the same, like I'm not sure if I can do this. So what I normally do is make myself a strong cup of tea or coffee, think about it for a little bit, look at the image itself, think about how on earth could what was I thinking? How can I do that? So don't panic, have another cup of coffee. The thing to do is to mix up generous quantities of the darker colors, and there's a range here. If you look at the reference photo that we pushed, there's some oranges, some greens, even some darks here and there to show the woodwork. Everything is going to be darker in tone than the bright spots. And we're only going to go, squint your eye, that we're only going to look at those areas of the reference photo that are dark, not the middle tones. All right? So we have the lights and the darker. We need the medium colors next, and it's just the same calculation again. Working quite quickly with the tones that are intermediate between the two. One of the tricks is when you see a color that works well in one area and you see the same color in another area, then paint everywhere at the same time. Don't do one little part at a time. When the same color comes in a painting in different places, it gives the feeling of a unity that's very pleasing to the eye. Once you have the basic blocking in, then you can do the impressionistic tile on top. So just get the brush loaded, think carefully about where you're going to place the color. The area behind the guy walking is not as bright as this, so it's lemon yellow in the shop. So now you have the basic blocking in of the picture that you're trying to paint. And now the next steps, the details, will all work. Adding in the extra darks of the beams, putting the reflected light on the guy walking. All those things will work if the blocking in is satisfactory, which seems to be okay. Well, it's that time. It's time to see if we can get the walking man fixed. So it's reflected light. Now the next phase is just to work slowly with one color point at a time, one note of color at a time, and suddenly you'll find that the details that you thought you didn't have will pop. So look carefully at the original. Now we just need to add some hints of brickwork with a very light, dry brush, but in every stroke in the right direction, in the perspective line. Gives the feeling of those little tiny 18th century bricks. And now, I'm not going to show the video for everything, but now what you do is the small details, the little dark bits, working on it. And this will take some time, so be patient, adjust as you go. And probably the last thing to do is strengthen any areas where you feel like when you look close up, there needs to be brighter or darker.